We're so glad to have you all. This is the Peace Corps Staying Alive event we're holding for International Education Week. My name is Ariana Kenya, and I'm a student ambassador at the World International Office of Learning at Stetson, and we're partnering with the Peace Corps Prep organization on campus.
Hi, yes, my name's Brielle. I'm one of the executive leaders, and the other leaders are also in here. Zykeria and Eniket are on here as well. But yeah, we're really happy to have you guys, and we're so thankful that you were able to join us today and talk about your experiences. So thank you.
Happy to be here.
Yes. So today we have 3 speakers, and we would like to kind of kickstart everything with you guys introducing yourself. So like your name and the year that you served in the Peace Corps, and which area you volunteered in while you were in the Peace Corps.
Who first? Melanie?
Oh.
Me? Joel? No, you're well, hey, I'll do it. Why not? I'll go first. Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Rubin, and it's great to be with you all. And Peace Corps is a lifelong journey. So I served in 1994, 96 in Costa Rica, and I was an environmental education volunteer.
Very cool. Who would like to go next?
I'll go. It's fine. So my name is Brown, and I was a youth in development volunteer, and I served in Morocco in 2019.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Bunton. I served from 2017 to 2020, yay COVID. And I was also in community and development in Fiji in the South Pacific.
Cool. You guys are all from like completely different areas, and so that's like really cool that we kind of have like a wide area to kind of learn about what your experiences were. So we kind of want to go a little bit more in expanding on like your experience and like the specific roles that you've done, like anything that you might have heard while you were just in the application process, and then maybe how once you got there, things that were different in a good way, and maybe some things that kind of surprised you when you got there. If anybody would like to go at that first.
So what was the first I guess the first question?
So like what was your main volunteer like specific area that you're concentrated on in the Peace Corps?
Okay, gotcha. So for Peace Corps Morocco, it actually started as in education sector. But through the years, the king decided that he really needed to focus on the youth in Morocco to increase employability. So it's very hard for youth in Morocco, and youth here is considered between the age 12 and 27, I believe. That's considered youth aid. So it's very hard for them to find jobs because the job situation isn't that stable for at least for youth. So the king decided that he wanted us to focus on the development of the youth of Morocco. So while I was living in Savannah, Georgia, I was working a lot with youth and like more so the at-risk youth population in Savannah, which I really, really love. And I decided to do a lot of volunteer work geared towards the more of the international development and that kind of intersected to international education, and caused me to kind of change my major in school around a little bit. So I went from an English major to like, oh, let me explore education, but our education wasn't the education major at Savannah State wasn't as, I guess, developed yet. They were still of in a transitional phase. So I was kind of able to build my major as an education major through interdisciplinary studies. So
Mhm.
that way I was able to incorporate social work classes, um, classes for education, and classes for business, like all these different classes. And it turned out great, because I used all these skills. Um, so through the application phase, it's kind of like you don't necessarily know what to expect. You think but I also started out as a Peace Corps ambassador as well. So yes, Melanie hooked everything up, and it was great. But through the through the Peace Corps ambassadorship, um, it led me to take on more leadership roles and really get to know what Peace Corps is about, and really get to know, really make that decision for myself, not kind of what I see on TV, internet, but really I was able to do my own research through the ambassadorship, really.
Oh, and then like what type of out of like those courses you've done in college, which things like what do you think you pulled away from your courses enough that kind of repeated the most useful while you were abroad?
Yeah, so I would say honestly the three most important classes I took, three or four, I would say one, linguistics. That was a part of our English major program. I wish we had more classes geared towards like linguistics and ELL, that type of thing. But we had linguistics that helped a lot. We had educational psychology that really helped me, and we also had like I call it international education, like an international education course, but it was a study of educational systems from around the world. And so I got to know about what the school system is alike, what it was like in Morocco, what the school systems are like in places like Sweden and the Netherlands. So I guess you would call it like a comparative education course. So I took this class and I was able to compare different educational systems. And so I found Morocco's education system so intriguing because, to be honest, Morocco is just baby stepping themselves out of colonization from France. So that's why when people come here, they're so shocked because they're like, they mix Arabic and French together, and that's because they're colonized by the French. So their school system is still kind of under the French rule, if that makes sense. So those classes, putting everything together, linguistics, because of the effects of colonization on language and culture in Morocco, and the school system, educational psychology, because I'm working with youth, so I'm working with kids who are from different areas of Morocco, from 3 years old to youth who are 27-year-olds. And so yeah, it's those classes really helped, with my experience with youth development.
And if I could sort of add an maybe not a different angle to that, but what Nico says really resonates with me, because when I served, when I got into the Peace Corps, I'll put it this way: when I got in, they gave me actually a couple of different options. They were, because of what I was interested in prior. You could do environmental ed, or you could do community development in the city, which is what they offered me, and that was because of the different things that I cared about prior and that I got experiences in. So I took classes in education. I ended up getting an elementary ed teacher certification in undergrad. And I worked on a kibbutz in Israel. So I did farming and I did environmental volunteering. So I had that sort of thing to spice it up a little bit. And, it was more a function in terms of where I served and what I did, a function of what I cared about. And the thing that Peace Corps does is it creates a match, right? So as Nick was pointing,
Absolutely.
the king wants something. Well, the king wants what the king wants, right? So the king says, I want this from Morocco. And then Morocco says, this is what we want. And they take that and they give that request to what we call a mission director for the Peace Corps in that country. So in Rabat, in the capital, right? There's a Peace Corps chief, the mission director, and he or she, they receive that request, and then they take that and they go back to headquarters in Washington, and they say, this is what the king wants. And Washington says, well, these are our strategic goals for development in Africa and engagement, and here's where that fits. So now let's find volunteers that fit that intersection and who's applied. And so they look, and if you have a diverse background, or if you've done different things in different areas, you're actually more attractive, because they'll say, aha, I never knew that like living on a kibbutz in Israel would matter to anything professional. I thought I'm just going there for the summer to work. Turns out that was a major decision point for the agency to say, this person can do environmental work. And they put me in environmental ed, and so, follow your heart, I guess, is the thing. Do what you like to do and put it out there, and don't leave any stone unturned, right? When you apply, when you say who you are, because you never know what's going to show up that they're actually going to match. And then the king, although we didn't have the king, we had the presidente, but the king gets who the king wants. But you can never plan, is what I'm getting at. Get there.
And what about you, Megan? Like, what was your volunteer experience like, and like what type of things were you involved in when you were deciding to go on the path of volunteering?
Sure, yeah. Sorry about that. I did my undergrad. I actually went to the University of Central Florida, so not that far away from Stetson. I did my undergraduate degree in anthropology, so I did a lot of that, like cultural development work and studies on human history and how that has evolved in our many societies. And then I went to graduate school, and I have a degree in higher education and educational leadership. And part of my experience in grad school was working in a global education office and living, funnily enough, in Costa Rica for a little bit, doing environmental work. And
everything comes back to Costa Rica, by the way.
Yeah. There's a lot of US citizens that currently live in Costa Rica, is what I learned. So in growing up, I was like, I did Girl Scouts for 13 years. My parents like made sure we were always involved in the community. Like we were out doing like just a bunch of different things. So I was kind of raised on this idea of like, first, what does it mean to give while you can, right? Like whenever you have the opportunity, like just doing a little bit of service for other people helps the world and however you see it.
Yeah.
And also, when I was in school, I learned how important it was to make the world a little bit of a smaller place, right? We're always like, well, that's happening over there, so I don't need to worry about it. And when you finally get off the plane in the Peace Corps, and you are like, oh, I'm in a different country right now, and this is just enveloping all of your senses, you realize, and then you start to learn, and then you meet people who've been to the same places, and you're like, oh, the world is a much smaller place. I can get along with them. This is more than just like me doing some sort of building project here. This is me like trying to connect with other people around the world and make something matter that's more than like the things we type out on our computer every day or all of this other stuff. Like, yeah, we make the world a smaller place by being open to meeting and learning in this space. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So like I would like to segue off that point that you made about like when you first got to your like arrival destination. So like when you got to where you were serving, what were like some of the culture shocks that you faced while, having to adjust in a new country and also work there and adapt to the working style?
I just have to say everybody's faces when she asked that question was priceless.
Got to screenshot that.
I'll just say so we arrived at like 6 in the morning because we hop over the international date line. So we arrived at 6 in the morning. That first night, I called my parents and I was like, I've made the biggest mistake I've ever made. Get me home. I don't know what I'm doing here. Everybody else is like happy and like they're all like cheerful and stuff. And I was like, can I even do this? Like, what the heck is going on? And the moral of the story is I extended for a third year. So when you get there, don't believe what you're experiencing right off the bat. You might need some time to settle in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what about you, Shaniqua? Did you have like a really easy experience of like adjusting, or did it also take you like a while to kind of like settle in?
Girl, a question. Okay. So yeah, honestly, everybody, do not let anybody tell you a lie. Like she said, it's an adjustment period, and you go through training talking about what that means. What is culture shock? You know, what are the stages of culture shock? Because culture shock comes in stages. So when we got there, they put us in these villas on this beautiful white sandy beach.
You're kidding.
And we were like, oh, Morocco, this is it. Okay. So you're in 2 weeks, but you're in this compound, right? You're enclosed. So you think this is what it is. And you're like, oh man. So that, you know, you have your honeymoon phase, right?
Mm-hmm.
Honeymoon phase. And and then they kind of plop you. You know, we got dropped off into, I would say, the middle of nowhere, right? And so it's just dust. It's just, and you see the bus leaving you and your site mates, and you're just like, okay. And you guys start to veer off into your family. So you have these strangers picking you up. They're speaking languages that you don't know. You're just like, okay. So yeah, but it's all exciting, right? It's the honeymoon phase, so everything is new. But yeah, you get through this this difficult. It's a difficult because then the honeymoon period starts to fade, and then this becomes your reality. Now you're in places where you realize how far away you are, and sometimes you're in places where you're far away from other volunteers. So it's just you, and you have to make it work with the tools you were given. And so yeah, so it goes up and down. It goes up and down, and that's what it was for me, and I think for all of us. You have the WhatsApp group chat. Everybody's venting, right?
Man.
So yeah, it's just waves and waves of emotion. But I would say the biggest adjustment for me was privacy. Um, Here, it's an Islamic country. And, when kids are living with their parents, like the parents here don't believe in privacy. Like when you go to the smaller towns, the rural towns, no, it's almost it's like you're exposed all the time. So that was the difficult part for me. I never had time to just sit back and say, okay, let me get my thoughts together. I would come home and my host dad, he would quiz me on my Moroccan Arabic every time I came home. And so after you've been in class for almost 12 hours in a day, or like 8 hours, like you don't want to come home and get quizzed on the language. You want rest, you want peace, you want time to yourself, you know, those types. So I think the privacy thing was a very, extremely hard thing to adjust to.
So it's really funny as you're talking, you slipped in the WhatsApp chat. It's like, huh. So this is what it feels like to be the old one in the room. And when I joined the Peace Corps, we talked about the 60s volunteers. So I guess I'm the 90s volunteers now. And we had no, you know, in my village where I lived, we had one phone in the village, a coin payphone. I have some coins here if you guys know what that is. But and that was it. So the culture shock, the thing that was the most cultural shock for me over time when I tried to think about that as an experience was that I'm a city person and I was living in McComb.
Oh.
And a dear friend of mine, I'm from Pittsburgh originally, and she, one of my friends, co-volunteers, she was from Carlisle, PA, which is in the center of the state. And in our closing out program, when we finished and we all meet, called Close of Service, COS, she spoke up. She said, Joel proves the point. You can take the boy out of the city, but you can't take the city out of the boy. And it was true, right? Like at a certain point, I saw it was like home. At the beginning, the big culture shock for me though was, in many ways, it was the heat, the food, and then getting into the house and realizing that I was in a house maybe the size of like I don't know, like two of my bedrooms growing up. Like I don't know, it was maybe like 15 feet by 40 feet, and there were about 8 of us packed in there. We had dividers. We didn't have walls. And then next to me on one side was a new married couple with a newborn. And then on the other side were my parents who had piss bowl. Okay, so I'm sorry, I say it like that, right? So that was my night. Like I was getting woken up by all these things. Like this is different, and I'm Jewish. And then at 5 a.m, I would hear the rosary go off, and they would be chanting. I'm like, what is happening here? So it was great. It was great fun. I loved it to death. They were family. They are family. I actually still go visit Costa Rica. I'm still in touch now 3 decades later with the family in the village, and my brothers, and the kids now are like 35 and they have kids, and we WhatsApp now. So it's crazy, but the culture, it was on every possible pore of my skin. It was in every level, but the big one was city versus country.
So like as you were in Costa Rica and you had the paid phone, like what was that? How did that limit your communication with like your family and friends? Like was it very hard to get in touch with them considering like time zone differences and just like the differences in means of communications?
I'll tell you what, Ariana. I have a lot of empathy for the volunteers today. I actually felt like the worst part of my experience in terms of becoming a real Peace Corps volunteer in my mind was when I was still holding on to home, or when I was holding on to even my friends, my co-volunteers in different places. Like I really nailed it and felt like I was really doing this when I didn't have contact, when I was really just there, living in the village, in the town, in the communities where I was doing the work. I was getting up in the morning, I was eating food in the house, I was off to the schools, teaching, going to an office that I worked in, speaking Spanish full time, dreaming in Spanish, going out to the bar at night, getting up in the morning. Maybe I would write a letter. That was it. I had no, distractions. At 8, 9 at night, it was bedtime. And that was that. We're up at 5:30. The chickens, the roosters are crowing, and there it is. Today, I don't know how you all do it. Like, and so that for me, it was writing letters. I have up in the attic hundreds of letters that were handwritten to me, and that my family gave to me. Like my penmanship was actually good back then. And so staying in touch, I would get to the phone every now and again. And my dad was reminding me about how expensive the calls were, because it was like dial, international operator, collect, yes, receive charges, please, all of that stuff. No texting. There was no such thing as a cell phone really back then. No internet, no Wi-Fi. Now in the village, when I go back, people are walking around with smartphones. So that's cool. But I really feel like I was like, last thing, I promise I'll shut up after this, but they send you news weeks when you're in the Peace Corps. I don't know if they still do, but I remember in like April of 1995, I think it was, I very clearly remember this. There was this cover of a Newsweek that said, World Wide Web, what is it? I was like, oh, what is that? So like, I was sort of probably in the last year or two of life before the web really went global. And, you know, I feel very, very fortunate I was able to experience that.
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't imagine like you had to go back and learn about the internet and then it like exponentially expands all over the world.
Well, I went to grad school. I didn't know anything.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's interesting to me that you had these like culture shocks when you first, you know, go into the country in which you're serving. But did you feel that way also, like when you came back to the US afterwards? Like you were like, whoa, like this is different, even though it used to be your norm. Was there like that sort of, or did you like automatically just feel like you were back to normalcy?
Coming back to the US, this is really fun. I realized how much I hated things in the US and like, how much I didn't want to be like a part of certain things that were going on. Also with the caveat that I got evacuated from Peace Corps in 2020, so that was it.
Right.
That comes like that's like culture shock times 10 because now you're having to deal with everyone else in the country also going through culture shock.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a different like situation. But I do remember I was at like some event and I told my mom, I was like, I need to take a break. There's too many people around. I've been living in a village of 200 people for almost 3 years. Like I couldn't deal. And then the other one was going back to a Publix. I was like, oh my gosh, why are there 25
Yes.
rice options? I just need the one bag of plain rice. I don't want anything else. And I told I was like, Dad, I'm gonna go sit in the car. You can finish the grocery shopping.
Good for you.
This is overwhelming for me. So most definitely experienced that on a lot of levels.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to that as well. During when COVID broke out, I was studying abroad in South Korea and everybody, you know, is wearing masks and they're taking the most measures that they can and all the programs were, you know, sent back to the United States. And I come back home and people are, you know, not wanting to wear their masks and, you know, it's kind of more risk where in the US where I live than where it was in Korea. And I think when I came back, that was like one of the biggest shocks that I had, like when I came back and having reverse culture shock. I was like, oh my gosh, I hope everybody's okay. So I could really kind of relate to kind of the amount of like how people around you kind of make a bigger, greater concern to you than it was beforehand. Yeah. What about you, Shaniqua? Did you have like any major reverse culture shock scenarios came back?
Oh man. So you know when we got evacuated, besides, yes, I had the same experience with the going into the grocery store. That was my first because I went home to my best friend, you know. So she bought a house, so I went home, stayed with her. First thing we went to Walmart, right? And I remember standing in and I said, "Why do we have so many milks? Why there's so many milks? For what?" Which is funny because I don't even like the milk here in Morocco, but I still was just like, why do we have so many milks? And I was like, why do we have all these things? And I got so frustrated because I was like, we have so many things.
Yeah.
And I was already on the minimalist journey before I joined Morocco, but this like exacerbated it. And I was just like, how can people live with so many things, so many options? It's just overwhelming. So there was that, but also when we were evacuated, and so remember now, when I got evacuated, I'm coming back to Savannah, Georgia. I'm coming back to Georgia. So this is evacuate. This is when all the race stuff is happening. George Floyd and Aubrey and yeah, next door to us, you know, in Savannah, in Georgia, you know. So this is happening right next door to me, and I just remember being so when all this happening, especially as an African American volunteer. I remember being so depressed when I came back and all this stuff was happening in the US. And I just was like, because I was like, I'm gonna eventually go back to Morocco. When I was evacuated, I say, guys, I'm going back to Morocco. I have my carte de séjour, so I have my residency card. I'm going back. As soon as it's open, I'm gonna go back. But then I was like, oh, I'll wait. Let me save for. I said, let me save for 1 year. Let me save money for 1 year, and then I'll go back. But when all these stories, and I just kept thinking, I cannot raise kids in a society like this. I cannot raise Black children in a society like this. I can't. No, Morocco's not perfect, but this whole uh it's pros and cons to collectivist society, it's pros and cons to individualistic society. But what I saw in Morocco, the love and the people uniting and people supporting you, and there's no guns in this country. You would never hear about a school shooting in Morocco ever. You would never hear. You might hear someone get something stolen or something like that, but you would never hear someone get something stolen by gunpoint. So I was in my second month, and I was just like, I'm going back to Morocco. I dropped out of my TEFL because I was like, I'm gonna get my TEFL, save for a year, go back to Morocco. I stayed there. I stayed there for like 2 months, and I said, I saved maybe $1,000. Not even that. I left the U.S. with $800, and I said, I'm going back to Morocco, and I'll make it work. I didn't have a place to stay. I didn't have nothing figured out. I will make it work. Because over me living over there, I can see a life for me, for a future family. I said, what's happening now? I can't. Like I mentally couldn't handle it. So yeah, I left when all this stuff was happening. I came right back.
I find that really interesting. Just like a personal anecdote, my aunt also served in Morocco in the Peace Corps, and it was like, I don't even know what year. It was a long time ago, but she had the same story, not the same, but a similar story in the fact that she had so many like shocks when she came back that she decided that she was not going to be living in America after that, because she said, you can say all these things about, these outside countries and these, like there's a lot of pros and cons to them. But she was like, but you can't beat like the interpersonal like communication that you have with these other people. Like there's just a love in that community, and she still hasn't moved back to the US to like this date. And it's just like very interesting because it's like the same place almost, and a very similar like experience and outlook on it.
When you build a community, it almost gets addicting, like, wow, to feel this love from a stranger who, one, they don't want anything from me. As a matter of fact, they give so much. And I was like, so you start to see the cons, and the individualistic society becomes just so apparent and so strong. And you're just like, then you start to rethink your own values, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your own values, and everything is kind of warped, and you're just like, this is not who I am anymore.
It's so interesting. Like the both of you went through such a trauma, with the COVID. I can't even imagine what it would be like to end service or be yanked at service and to come home, and not just come home, but to come home to a country hunkered down, right? You're not like out and about with your friends bragging, hey, I was in the Peace Corps, I'm back now, let's buy her a drink, nothing. Right. You're like stuck at home. So I had such the opposite experience. It's like not even in the same dynamic, but there is a thread to what you said there that resonates with me, Nico. My experience, which is essentially like I wanted to go back, right? So I ended up going straight to grad school. I got in my second year to graduate school. I'd taken the GREs prior to departure to set it up so if I wanted to apply, I could. It gave us a 5-year gap for those tests. I got into grad school. I actually went home to Pittsburgh for my sister's wedding halfway through, and visited a couple of grad schools while I was there. And one of them said, hey, we give half off if you served in the Peace Corps.
Right.
Really? And that was Carnegie Mellon. So I'm like, well, I don't want to come home here, but half off. And so I applied, I got in, it synced well, and I was afraid to come home without anything to do. And so I was very excited to have something to do rather than go home and to what. So I went to grad school right away, summer program for some skills building, and then the fall, and then about like October or so, I crashed. Like it happened, right? Like I finally hit me, and I literally crashed. Like everything crashed, and I came through a couple months and worked through some things, but I really crashed because I was in this computer lab till 2 a.m. every night, and I was working. It's like, what am I doing? And I need to go back. And I muscled through it. And the first thing I did after grad school was go straight back to Costa Rica. And I hung out for like a month in the village watching the World Cup and drinking beer. So, and that actually was really balancing. And from there, then they were like, okay, Joel, you got to go back, you got to start your career. And like, it was like, okay, yeah, I do. And it was helpful. Like, it's sort of like a little closure there. So for you both, the closure thing, I don't know how it is for you, but like the COVID evacuees, I mean, that gap at the end, that fire drill to get out, I mean, I can't imagine how emotionally challenging that was.
Yeah.
What was your journey like after you evacuated, Megan? Like, and I know personally I could relate to the evacuation thing when I had to leave all my friends without saying goodbye, and like, and you kind of like you're living from the day-to-day lifestyle, and then you suddenly get pulled out of it and having to like go back home as if kind of nothing happened, but then also be faced by that difference in interaction because of COVID. Like, how did that impact you, and like how did that lead you to kind of where you are now?
Yeah. The initial shock was the fact that when you're in the Peace Corps, you're an employee of the US government, right? So they're responsible for anything and everything that you do and are a part of. And it was very it was just so off-putting because not only for us volunteers, like they're like, you have 4 days to pack your bag and get to the Capitol. That's it. And like when I lived in Fiji, we have islands, like they were chartering $10,000 planes to get one volunteer off of one island. And they were doing that around the world, right? And so, yes, like I was feeling that as myself and like as my fellow volunteers, but also remembering like that there are people in all of these countries that we're like leaving behind a little bit. And that was really, really difficult. Like, what about that service thing that we were finishing up? What about that thing we were building? For me, I couldn't go to like my school's end of the year party. That was the next week. And I was like, oh my God, or end of the term party. And like the students were crushed, right? So all of us coming back, that initial shock was just kind of really overwhelming. And then when you come back, the whole country was on a hiring freeze for 10 months. So I'm 27 years old sitting in my parents' house feeling like a complete failure because I've been to grad school, I have no job, I have no place to go. I'm like squatting at my parents' house while they're trying to live their lives. And I think that happens even beyond COVID. There's this some people in my group had clarity on what they wanted to do, kind of like what Joel said. They were applying for jobs and doing Zoom calls at 2 a.m. and like all of this stuff that technology affords us now. But then some of us just like came home and were like, and where do I matter here now? That was like the biggest thing to get over. Like, where do I matter back here, and how do I find that place again? And that can be a bit of a struggle.
Jeez. Yeah, the whole COVID thing. I remember Morocco, all they told us was stay it was like stay alert. We'll like they basically was like, we'll let you know. So they told us go ahead, in your apartments, go ahead and write down the names of who you want to give your stuff to. And they say we don't know if you guys are gonna leave because we're in Morocco. It hasn't reached us yet. So, but everybody else is getting evacuated, so you guys are probably next. So they said go ahead and make a list of all the things you want to give away just in case. I think they called me like I remember all of us got the alert like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They said they literally called and said drop everything and leave right now. So yeah. So it wasn't like, okay, guys, go ahead and say goodbye. They say drop everything, leave right now. But they told us the night before, go ahead and pack up just in case because we have a feeling that you guys are gonna leave. Then we got the call, pack everything, go right now, head to the safety point or the checkpoint, whatever it was called. And so we're asking this questions. Okay, well, what about this? Well, I have internet. Don't worry about it. The supervisors, they'll come and they'll take care of that later. You guys have to go. And like she said, like they chartered the planes. We were on the same flight as the embassy people. So yeah, so we all kind of met up back at Rabat. Everybody, and then we were quarantined in this hotel, so nobody could not leave the hotel. And it was just wild. It was like just drop everything and go, and you just snatched out. And at this point, because honestly, when you hit that 6 month, I feel like, and we were told this, but we didn't believe it, of course. But for real, that kind of 6 month mark, you kind of in your zone at your final site. You're like, okay, I got friends here. I started my job. Me and the language, we getting better. My integration is getting better. About 6 months, it's like your integration is pretty good, So to be snatched out just when you're getting that sweet spot in your sight, that was the devastating part for us, because we hadn't just arrived, but we had just settled in really into our final site. We were at this kind of 6 or 7 month mark. So to find our way in our sites where all of us were proud at that 6 month mark, they snatched us out. And so that was the most heartbreaking part of it. All of us had just found our groove, just made friends, just built relationships with counterpart, just feeling comfortable with the language and being able to use it naturally, and just snatched away. So yeah, it was that part was pretty devastating. Like, yeah, this is home now, and then you just snatched away from it.
Yeah, just to like shed some like positivity. Like, what was like from your experience, what do you think was like the most rewarding thing or memorable thing that you think will continue on with you as you continue to pursue your current paths?
I'll tell you what. I'll jump in real quick on this because yeah, I a little long in the tooth now in the career, right? So I've been a couple decades now working in Washington, and I think the thing that I get most from that experience is the recognition that I can kind of do anything. And it's hard. Work is hard. There are ups and downs. There are lots of challenges, but like, I served in the Peace Corps, and I lived there, and I made that work. If I can make that work, I will make any of this work. And if it doesn't work, I will keep on working to make it work. And the sort of recognition that I'm extraordinarily fortunate to have been born in this country of exorbitance and riches. And there are people way smarter than me, in the village who were born in a country without the resources and the support and the humility that comes with that, to recognize that in a way, I kind of owe it to them. That's in the back of my mind too, to keep pushing. And I was down there not so long ago and visiting in the village, and I do some TV stuff, and I posted some of my interviews and all. And, they just, they coalesced around me, the friends in the village and the family, and we just talked about it. And they looked so proud that I was engaged in the way I'm engaged, and I felt so proud. I felt like it was like my family, you know, my people, my support, and it was like our achievement to be able to share. And so I feel like that's like a lifelong thing, that at the end of the day it's this sense of you can make a difference, and you as one individual, and you can do that based upon, rooted in the idea that you have been part of something where you served in a position, in a role that was extraordinary and challenging, and you know, you surpassed, and that's I think that's really an extraordinary thing from the Peace Corps as a concept, that people literally go somewhere for 2 years that's totally different, foreign, whatnot to them, foreign in the lowercase of F, just everything is foreign, and you can make it work. Because the best part about this, I promise that the last thing I'll say, is that it really teaches you, it certainly taught me, that we are literally all equal, right? Like we are literally, there's literally no difference between us and people anywhere around the world. We are all people, and we have different circumstances and different life experiences and influences, but we are all people, and we're all equal. And it's I don't know, it's a battery that keeps on charged all the time, still is going, even with working in Washington with, as you all know, the insanity that exists in this town. It's an extraordinary guide.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to cut you guys off. I have to run to another meeting, but I just really want to say thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it, and I learned a lot from you guys' stories and stuff. And I'm so sorry that you guys had to go through with the COVID and stuff, but I'm glad you kind of like grew from it, and just I'm glad your whole experience was just amazing for the most part. But thank you so much, and I hope you guys can come back, and I can hear more about you guys' stories. It was really good.
All right.
Thank you for joining us. What about you, Shanika and Megan? Like, what are your like memorable moments and takeaways?
Can I show a picture?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see if, oh gosh, this virtual background is messy. How do I get this off of here? Maybe I can, okay, right here. Maybe. So sorry about the glare, but that was my village that I lived in.
Oh.
And I show that as like the most memorable thing, because all I had to do was hike to the top of this mountain and like look down and see
Wow.
everything there. And just like on those days that you're really feeling it, like where you haven't had internet connection, where you haven't talked to anybody, where the one project didn't work and the grant was really frustrating, or you've just had a really bad day, no one is connecting with you in the way you want. Like all it took for me was like, I'm gonna take 2 hours, I'm gonna walk up to the top of this mountain and just like look at how beautiful this place is, and remind myself, like, I knew I would never go hungry in my village. I knew that the people trusted me, like weirdly so. Like, why did you trust me? I was some kid who came into your village, and you're like, yeah, the kids can go over to your house and play, and we're gonna cook with you, and we're gonna do all this fun stuff. And so there's this, like Shanique was talking about, there's this sense of community that is just so unbelievable when you're placed in one of these sites. And I would just like to reiterate Joel's point as well. Like when you're there, yes, it's important to have your like support network of other volunteers, but you in the Peace Corps Prep, if you get the chance, get away from other US citizens. Go like do the work that people are doing there. Go find the thing, and you will only be much more amazed by what you can do and how well you can like find adjustment and like purpose in whatever way you see fit. Leave it there.
Great. I would say for me, oh man, Peace Corps taught me, or not just my experience in Peace Corps, my experience in Morocco taught me all the things that I wanted that I could never identify or that I could never quite identify. Like in the US, like I never thought about, I thought that I would never have like a family, or I never thought that I would be living internationally. First, like I've never left. I'm a small town girl, and I never left the United States before. I did parents who had money. I could study abroad, and I've never studied abroad before. I've never left America. Like we didn't take trips and do all these things. So Peace Corps just showed me what I could have, and it's like there's not. I didn't have to sell my soul for it. You know, so I was like, wow, like I'm in a country where there's these strong family units. Are you telling me I can have that and not have to work myself to death to try to support that family? So I can have a good life and a family at the same time and I don't have to struggle? You know, like it showed me so much that I wanted that I couldn't identify. Even in my major, I kept switching all my majors. I was passionate about so many things. People told me no. In the US, you pick one job, you work that job for the rest of your life, you get benefits, and that's it. You work yourself to the bone until you're at retirement age, and so on and so forth. US told me that there is a path that I had to follow. And as much as I tried to follow it, it just would never work. And I could not understand why couldn't I just be like normal people, take a normal route. But Peace Corps kind of showed me like, no, you were meant for a different route. And this route was meant for you. And you can have all these things, even though your route is different from other people. And I'm like, I didn't know that. I thought I had to be like everybody else. And so it kind of Peace Corps just showed me like you can have these things and there's not this high price for it. You can have these things because you deserve to have these things.
Mhm.
It's not, oh, I work for these things. No, you deserve to be comfortable. You deserve to feel safe. You deserve to have a strong family unit. You deserve to be around people who care about you and want the best. And it's just amazing. So I definitely don't, even in the hard times, you look back and you like, I do not regret my Peace Corps experience.
Thank you so
Great.
much for sharing that. Like, it's really been amazing to hear like about your guys' experiences, and we just really appreciate the time that you guys have taken to come and join us and like speak and share your journey with us. The event is wrapping up, but like, what do you have any like short things that you'd like to say for people that may be interested in becoming a Peace Corps volunteer?
I'd say do it and embrace it. It is a lifelong gift to humanity and to yourself. So do it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be open. Just be open to opportunity. Don't place yourself in a box. Peace Corps is not about as much as the society in the States sometimes want us to place ourselves in a box. Do not limit yourself. When you go out, just be open. Be open to different opportunities. Be open to different foods and different people, and different conversations with different people. Um, yeah, just be open to experiences. Be open to opportunity.
Yeah, for those of you who might potentially do this in the future, I would say in order to work yourself up to all of the challenges you might face in this, like find one thing a week where you can just stretch yourself in your comfort zone a little bit.
Mhm.
Whether it's a new food, making a new contact, doing a new activity, just push get to that edge and just take the one step over the line, and you will find yourself doing a lot more things than you thought you would, and surprising yourself at you becoming the person like somebody's always set you up to be, whether yourself or your parents. You're like, oh, I can I can do these things. I have the know-how and just need the willpower.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful like thing that a lot of people that are young, especially like and Gen Zs, where we're living with technology and the dynamic of how we live and are growing up in our households are different. I feel like a lot of people in our age have a lot of conflict with that, feeling that they can't do more and kind of need those experiences that push them to kind of realize that they have the ability to do and be successful in whatever they wish to be as well. Yeah. Thank you.
I was
so
able to lengthen our time a little bit. So if we did want to try to take a few questions from the audience, we do have a few minutes.
Okay.
If anybody else had any questions.
Oh, yeah. I see somebody.
While we're waiting for the audience, I do have one question for those who are not still in the country in which they served. What things do you miss the most from your country where you served?
For anybody who doesn't know sign language, the food. When you live in the tropics, and I could just walk down the road and I could literally pick bananas, guava, kavika, which is like a type of apple, mangoes, cocoa pods, soursop, all of those fruits right off the tree, and I just miss that.
And it's not the same in the US.
No,
At all.
The dried passion fruit in the grocery store aisle. I'm like, that's not insane.
Yeah, no, I think the food for sure, but also just the cultural openness, the engagement, the being out there in the field, moving outdoors, all of that. This sort of fusion of the intellectual and the physical. So, I'm not just doing a job in an office at a computer like now, I'm actually physically out there. And also it's very intellectually stimulating because it's still a new culture, even after a couple of years, new language, all of that all encompassing being out there and engaged, full body experience 24/7.
Nika, I'm going to reframe it for you a little bit. What do you miss about the US?
Oh,
How dare you? Oh my gosh, what do I miss about the US? Maybe food, maybe seasonings, certain seasonings. Yeah, food related stuff like
A few people.
now that's a whole nother category. You already know. But yeah, as far as like material things, yeah, maybe just food. Since the States is just a mash of so many cultures, you can find any kind of food in the States, and so I do miss that. Like, I'm in Atlanta, and if I just happen to want some Ethiopian food or some Somalian food, I want some Jamaican food, go to a Jamaican restaurant, yeah, so I do miss the variety. That's the word. I miss the variety of foods. Yeah, that was a hard thing to come back to and adjust to again. It's like, oh man, like there's no variety in the foods anymore. So yeah, that's it. So yeah, I definitely miss variety in food.
Zakaria asked, how can I prepare myself for the youth and development sector? So I think that was Megan and Nika were both youth and development.
It's such a broad sector. We had people that were working at the ministry offices in the bigger towns, But then we had people like myself that were in rural communities, and we split our time between the school and also youth and development in our community. So we did finance classes. I helped with Girl Guides and Boy Scouts, and we did do some like refurbishment projects that were led by our youth, which, like Shanique was saying, our youth was 18 to 35 unmarried.
Yeah.
So you are like, if you're younger than 18, you're a student. So it's this weird mix. So just understanding, like, if you want youth and development, go through those countries if you don't care where you live and read what they're actually doing, because it is so broad. So just do some of that research when you're looking at those open positions.
I would say volunteer with youth in your community as much as you can. Because in youth development, I feel like, I could be wrong, but talking to other youth in development volunteers, no matter where you go, you're going to be teaching something. You're going to be teaching and you're going to be tutoring. So tutor as much as you can. Get those some of those basic teaching skills, because that was a mistake that I saw volunteers who came in with me. A lot of them didn't have any like kind of teaching experience, maybe some tutoring, but they realized like, oh my gosh, I do not have enough teaching experience to do this job. And it made them very, very nervous. So go ahead and start volunteering with youth in your community. Like my favorite thing was to volunteer with our refugee center and tutoring students who just came to the U.S. and just experiences like that. Refugee resettlement, work for those type of offices, volunteer, intern. But yes, up on maybe take some education courses if possible. But definitely that get to know the youth in your community and volunteer as much as possible with teaching and tutoring. Lead youth groups with activities, anything like that. You could camping, hiking, long as it's with the youth, like any of that, because you're doing everything with the youth.
And Joel, I know you weren't a youth and development guy, but what would you recommend for preparing for any sector? What helped you the most?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and I think to the points that were discussed, some type of professional exposure can be very helpful. So I did environmental ed, and in undergrad I had a degree in elementary education, a certification, along with politics, which is a whole other story. But not a professional degree, really. But I think, volunteering, getting engaged, doing environmental work. If you really love ag and you want to do ag work, go do ag extension type work or get involved in the sector somehow. If you want to work with youth, volunteer with entities that work directly with kids. Working in schools, working in after school programs. So try to nail it and get that, because that's not going to like train you exactly how to do the job in the Peace Corps, but it's going to demonstrate an interest in and aptitude and commitment to that issue and that work. And what happens in Peace Corps, and I know we talked about it a bit, but you get 3 months of training in country before you get sent to your site for 2 years. So in that 3-month training module, they're going to really ramp you up into understanding how to do that work in that country, because the context of the country matters. So you'll get that training. The key thing is to show that you really are committed to that area. And I think that's by getting deeper in professional kind of, experiences.
Thank you, sir. Ariana, I didn't mean to take it over.
No,
I will totally.
You're perfectly fine.
Team effort.
Appreciate it. Okay. Oh, okay. There's Janika sharing more tips about it. Show that you have a passion for something. Remember, intersection is key. Youth and whatever your other passions are. Just good advice. So I really thank you so much for your time. Like really, I couldn't imagine that I was going to get as much as feedback as I did from those that I've reached out to. And like, I'm internally grateful. It was like a really good learning experience to like get to meet you guys and conversate with you on such a social level, to kind of get to know who you are as people. Everybody has so many different backgrounds, especially like amongst you three, and like being able to see how every time, no matter what type of panels you make, seeing how you can kind of interconnect with each other and grow and get to know each other as people that are speaking as well, is always a memorable experience for me to kind of see and be a part of. But I hope and wish that you guys all have like a great Thanksgiving that's coming up next year, and are able to wrap up the year on a high note. And I hope that all of your family and friends also remain healthy. And we truly appreciate you coming to and speaking to us, and hope that everything goes well for you all.
Can I just say one more thing too? All right, sorry.
Of course, yeah.
Just the thing that I love about engaging on panels with other Peace Corps folks is how we may be all from totally different areas, and we were when we served, and we are here in this panel, but we have this experience in common that bonds us in ways that you see even in the dynamic here in the call coming through, and it's a really special experience, and I appreciate your pulling us together.
Me too. Thank you guys so much for the invite. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Do you have anything that you would like to say to wrap
No,
everything up?
just that we really appreciate it, and I loved getting to know some of you guys, and also just getting to hear about your experience. It definitely resonated with me. So I just really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk with us today.
Mm-hmm. And if you guys, I don't know if you guys are okay with it, but we would love to share like your LinkedIn information or email if people have any questions to reach out, if that's okay with you all.
Definitely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. We hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and you sleep well, as it's very late
Yeah,
for you.
thanks for the time.
We truly appreciate you coming and joining us so late in the night to share with your experiences with us.
Yeah.
No problem. I love this. Thank you.
With that, I'm going to stop the recording.
Yes.